Brilliant. Hope you everyone can hear me and see my slides. It's one of those unfortunate. My diary sort of has these hot spots where it's empty for days, and then everybody chooses the same day. And this was one of the days that everybody had chosen. So apologies for sort of the present and run approach, but I just wanted to sort of, because the next week I tend to do a lot of twilights with STEM learning in England as well, so it's quite a busy sort of time of day for me as well, this sort of after school slot. So I just wanted to speak in my role as a field officer, I suppose, for the Association for Science Education, and to tell you a little bit about what we offer. So as I do that, I thought it's probably a good idea to introduce myself, because maybe my background has influenced the path I've taken through the ASE as well, so or how I've interpreted my job description at the ASE. So my background is teaching secondary science in England. I spent 25 years teaching, 20 of those in special education in a special school, and have seen, excuse me, that sector certainly change in England over that time as well, from for the better, I think, as we've upskilled as a profession as well. But it's certainly been an interesting 20 years. I'm a chartered science teacher at the ASE, and I'll perhaps just mention that briefly. I popped in one slide for that. I've been part of a county or local authority science team, so I used to spend a day a week doing outreach across my local authority, which was again mainstream and mostly mainstream actually. So I've been a deputy head teacher, so in fact I ran the school for a while as well. I'm now field officer for sort of two big regions in the UK, so in England, sort of right in the middle, the East Midlands and Yorkshire and the Humber. So I sort of sit right in the middle of that sort of map of England, and that's sort of my core role, I suppose, with the ASE. I do that sort of most of the time, and I do a bit of dabbling in the projects, work with other people as well. And I've just written a chapter in this book, which if you follow Lee Hofe who's based at Leeds Trinity on Twitter, she's been flashing a physical copy, because I've not actually seen the hard copy yet, but I wrote the SEND chapter, which is sort of the English terminology, I suppose, for ASN, and that's due out anytime soon. So that's sort of my background, and I've used my role with the ASE to promote some of my interests as well. So as I explained who we are, so the ASE is a professional association. We're all about science, teaching and learning. So we're slightly different to some of the other professional bodies who we've got some representation from, because we have a pure focus. We're not interested even in the supply. We are interested in the retention of teachers, but we don't get involved in teacher recruitment so much. We certainly, although we want students to be interested in science, we don't necessarily have a vested interest in sort of recruitment to industry or anything like that. So we're wholly focused on science, teaching and learning, and that's across the whole age range, from sort of early years, sort of receptions, to sort of children starting school, all the way through to leaving compulsory education. So that's our background as a professional organisation. We've been around for my slides have frozen, which isn't very helpful, is it? Let me just, in fact, it looks like Teams or PowerPoint is having a little bit of a meltdown. It's one of the worst apps on the Mac, because it's not been optimized for the new stuff chips Apple use, so it's a bit slow. So we've been around in some form or other for over 100 years, not as we are now, but as organisations that have been around, joined, etc. So we've got a long history in supporting science. We're very focused on membership, member-driven. Most of our funding comes from membership and our journals as well. So members are integral to what we do. We like to think of ourselves as the voice for science and science education. That's sort of ASM forms part of that, and I've certainly been banging that drum along with Jane who you'll hear from later, in terms of making sure that our voice is heard, and the voice of our ASN learners is heard as well. And we're also, just to say, we're a charity, so we as a professional body, I suppose it just means we have charitable aims, and sometimes we use we do things, say for example, for free, because that fits our advocacy role as a charity. So what do we offer? We've got membership of the ASE, and it's worth pointing out here that membership of the ASE does support. It's a bit like when people talk about teaching unions fighting for improved paying conditions for everybody. Our voice, our representation to all sorts of government and all bodies represents members and non-members. So membership supports the work we do, and that's why it's really important that we sort of have as many members as possible. I'll mention membership in a moment, but we also have a number of networks. We have conferences and events, we've got publications, and then resources and guidance and things that you'll find sort of on our website, and sort of things that we offer through that route. So membership is charged differently depending on what phase you teach in. We also have a consultant membership, but don't feel you some. I think we leave people to choose what format or which membership category they best identify with. So the difference is obviously different journals. So primary, if you're a primary member, you get primary magazine. If you're a secondary member, you get SSR, and consultants get a sort of additional magazine on top. So we do offer as well professional registration, as mentioned earlier on. I'm always told to plug our public liability insurance, but to be fair, that's more, I think, in my opinion, a bit of a reassurance, and you get discounts off bookstores, off any face-to-face CPD we run at conferences, that sort of thing. So the prices are there. It's worth mentioning as well that if you are a taxpayer, then you can, just like a lot of professional fees, you can claim a tax allowance against those as well. And we also offer a slightly different pathway for trainees, an escalating digital only format. So it's all the journals are, we run a digital first model anyway, but all of the journals for trainees are digital because the price is so low. But again, access to the journals, the discounts, etc., and trainees get 1 free day at any of our events as well, which actually, when you look at something like the Scottish conference that's coming up, or at the annual conference that's usually somewhere in England, then that does offer good value for money. And if you join in year 1, you'll pay £24. If you join, if you join in the second year, you'll get the last 2 years, and so on. So it's a 3-year package. We also offer departmental membership, which is for either a department in the case of secondary phase schools, or that's 5 users. For primary schools, slightly different format, different package, different materials, and you get 8 users. So again, you don't have to be an individual member. And I have made these slides available, and I did, when I put these slides together, I was just recovering from COVID, so I have put together a sort of a slightly more, it feels like a slightly more organised version of this talk as well. And I'm not quite sure what's sort of been going off today, but I sort of feel like my mind's all over the place at the moment. Another thing we offer is professional registration, and I should own up that I also work for the Science Council, so I have got a little bit of a bias here, but we offer professional registration through the Science Council. So that's the opportunity to be registered science technician, a registered scientist, or a chartered science teacher, and you get that's recognition of what you the skills you bring to your role, and also the sort of knowledge and what the things you do as part of your role. You get letters for postnominals after your name, and it's that instant recognition. And I meant to say it helps with sort of promotion, but I certainly think as somebody who used to interview a lot of people, it certainly makes you stand out. So in terms of networks that we run, and Jane might mention this as well later on, but we sort of run this as a double act. So we decided that this sort of field, this branch of education was very underrepresented. So we set up what we call the Inclusive Science Education Group. You don't have to be an ASE member to join, so don't feel, oh, I can't, or maybe if you work on the periphery, so you're not in a classroom, but you work with schools, whatever, then we'd love to have you join in. We're not very formal, so we run it as a mailing list, and we hold, so it's that you sign up to be on the list. We'll say we're holding a meeting on so-and-so, so I think the next one's the 11th of May, and what the format is, you're welcome to come to a meeting or not. We won't chase you if you don't come. If you do come, you can sit and listen, you can join in, you can ask questions, share ideas. We're totally relaxed about it, and also in terms of sometimes we get approached by people who want answers as well. So for example, somebody said, I've got a visually impaired student in my group, really don't know what to do, and we ran a session on that and some really good ideas. So if you do want to join that, it's dead easy. Go to ase.org.uk/ISE and there's a sign up form, and that's all there is to it. And obviously because it's like a mailing list, you can leave at any time, but to be honest, I don't have time to send lots and lots of emails, so you certainly won't get spammed or mail bombed as a result of joining. We've also got things like newsletter. If you're on Twitter, and quite how long the rest of us will be when Elon Musk's finished buying it, I don't know, but there's a hashtag for sort of sciencey chat as well, and a weekly chat on a Monday. So do sort of have a look, see what's going on. It's quite a nice way to reach sort of science educators across the whole of the UK. Plug for our Scotland conference. The programme is linked and it's also on the ASE website if you go to the events tab, so you can have a look and see if any of the sessions are of interest to you. It's not, you don't turn up blind, you can see what the programme is, but the tickets are selling quite quickly. I know we've sold out of early career teacher tickets already because they've been selling so quickly. So that's coming up not that long actually, not far away, is it? Also in January, for those of you who want to travel a little further, we've got our annual conference, which is sort of in Sheffield, and that's running from Thursday to Saturday, the 5th of January to the 7th, and that's a huge, in fact, it's the biggest science education conference outside America. We get a huge European contingent because it's the only sort of one of its type, and we're just at the moment taking submissions for workshops next year as well. So I know we've together with Jane put in our submission, but pop that on your calendars if it's something you'll be interested in, and also all sorts of face-to-face events. But the events tab on the ASE website is a place to go to keep an eye on what's happening. Because of lockdown and COVID, we've run a lot of our events for the last 2 years online, which means that the sort of normal geographic restrictions in terms of travel, getting there, are relaxed. So have a look and see if there's something that's interesting, because you can sort of be there in seconds online. And sort of give you an idea, these are photographs I've taken at some of our events. So this was one of my workshops at the annual conference, the last face-to-face annual conference, because it's been online for the last 2 years, and photos I've taken at regional and national events. Very much the sort of place to be for networking, getting ideas, and meeting up with like-minded teachers. I mentioned the journals earlier on. SSR is the secondary school science review, so that's the one that the journal that secondary members get. It's changing format, so I won't say too much about that, but it might not look the same going forward if you've seen it in the past. Primary Science is my favourite. That's the primary phase magazine. It's sort of glossy, lots of photos, dead easy. Both those are peer reviewed. Education in Science is our house magazine. So that goes to every member, whether you're primary, secondary. It's got sections for things like technicians, early career. We've got additional support needs sort of section, SAND section, and so there's hopefully there's something in for all members. And the Journal of Emergent Science is open access. You can dip in and out of that. International for international members, and Science Teacher Education. It speaks for itself, but that's for our futures members. And what I've put together, which in the list I've resources I've passed on, a selection of sort of past articles, just to give you a flavour, because it's all right saying this is what you get, but unless you can have a look at them, and I can't bring physical copies of magazines over Teams, so I've just picked out one or two articles that might be interesting, and you're welcome to read those. We've got a bookshop. Members get a discount off all our publications. If we get a bigger discount if they're ones where the copyright resides with the ASE, because obviously we're able to discount them. And sort of really useful publications like The Language of Maths in Science, which is for sort of more of a secondary phase publication, but we know that there are issues around sort of language of maths, and there's sometimes discrepancies in subject areas. So do follow, if you're on social media again, follow our Millgate House bookstore, and we'll keep an eye out for those deals. But in terms of the ASE, we work with all sorts of bodies that have an interest in science education. We have a number of best practice documents. They're always being reviewed and updated. They're not particularly exciting, but they are useful. And we're looking, if you do download them and think, oh, that could be better, do let us know, because we're always thinking of ways to make them more accessible. And what could you do? Join, come along, meet people. We're always looking for people to contribute, whether that's to help run workshops, teach meets, write articles, join committees, and even join in with some of the projects. For example, we've got a fully funded project on keeping science practical this year, and we only have, I think, one Scottish school, and it is open to the whole of the UK, but it's been really hard to get the word out. So we'd like to see a few more Scottish schools taking part in that next year. So that's me, that's our offer as the ASE. I hate to sort of present and run, so there's my email address. I've also popped there details for Tessa's email address. Tess is field officer for Scotland. Obviously she's based in Scotland, so she's sort of far more aware, I suppose, of what happens. Thanks to Jane, my Scotland knowledge is rapidly improving. And it always seems for everything, especially everything seems so sensible and compared to the English system. So but I'm always happy for people to drop me an email or tweet, so message me on Twitter. Although email is probably the best way, because it's something that I check as part of my workflow. And thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. And Lynn,